Have you ever stopped to think about what your body's actually trying to tell you? Well, it turns out it's sending us messages all the time, not with words, but with color. Today, we're going to decode those secret signals by diving into the world of endogenous pigments. Yep, the colors our very own bodies create.
You know, let's start with something we've all experienced. You get a nasty bump, and for the next week, you watch this slow-motion rainbow bloom on your skin. That crazy kind of alarming color shift from a deep purple to a weird green and then a pale yellow? That's not random at all. It's a super precise biological story unfolding.
The key to understanding that bruise, and a whole lot more, is this hidden palette of pigments that our bodies are constantly whipping up. So, for this explainer, think of us as biological detectives. We're about to learn how to read the body's secret language of color.
So, what are we actually talking about here? The fancy term is endogenous pigment. Endogenous just means it comes from inside. So these aren't dyes or anything from the outside world. They are colored molecules our body produces, and they tell these incredibly vivid stories about our health, any injuries, and even, believe it or not, how old we are.
All right, so to kick things off, we have to talk about the biggest, most important family of pigments. And they all come from one source that I promise you've heard of: hemoglobin. And as you're about to see, it's responsible for a whole lot more than just the color red.
That's right, hemoglobin. You know, the protein in our red blood cells that hauls oxygen around? It's the parent molecule of this whole operation. When it's doing its job, our blood is that classic red color. But when blood cells get damaged or just get old, enzymes go to work and they start dismantling the hemoglobin. And that process, it creates this entire family of new pigments, each with its own unique color and its own story to tell.
And just look at this family tree, it's pretty impressive. Under different conditions, hemoglobin tells completely different stories. You know, a chemical change can turn it a chocolate brown, which could be a signal for poisoning. But in a simple healing bruise, that same breakdown process gives us golden yellows and oranges. Every single color is a specific clue that points to a totally unique biological event.
Now, some of these clues are a little more urgent than others. Let's look at one of the most dramatic and dangerous signals our body can produce: this striking, almost unnatural-looking cherry red.
This color comes from a pigment called carboxyhemoglobin. It forms when hemoglobin, which is supposed to be grabbing oxygen, grabs onto carbon monoxide instead. And here's the scary part: the bond it forms with CO is over 200 times stronger than its bond with oxygen. It latches on and just will not let go, which basically starves your cells of oxygen from the inside out. That bright cherry red color in the tissues, it's a critical and often a post-mortem sign of CO poisoning.
Okay, so we've seen how a color can signal some really serious danger. But now let's circle back to our original mystery, that Technicolor bruise. That color change isn't a sign of danger. It's actually a step-by-step story of your body cleaning up a mess and healing itself.
And this just shows the process perfectly. As that trapped blood in a bruise breaks down, the hemoglobin first turns into something called biliverdin. That's what gives it that greenish tint. Then you start to see hematoidin show up, which is this shiny orange pigment. After that comes hemosiderin, a golden yellow pigment. And that is the signal that your body is recycling the iron from those old red blood cells. Iron's way too valuable to just throw away. So that final yellow color you see, that's the cleanup crew finishing the job.
This whole hemoglobin breakdown thing can also happen on a much bigger scale. Another one of its derivatives is hemobilirubin. When the liver can't keep up with processing old red blood cells, this yellow pigment starts to build up in the body. It colors the skin and the whites of the eyes yellow. You've probably heard of it. We call this condition jaundice. It's a really clear visual sign that something's up with the liver or the blood.
Okay, let's switch gears. Not all pigments are about injuries or diseases. Some are really just a record of a life being lived. These pigments don't come from blood, they come from fats or lipids. You could call them the pigments of time.
And the most well-known of these has a perfect nickname: the wear and tear pigment. It's basically a sign that your cells have been around the block a few times, working hard for years.
This pigment is called lipofuscin. It's a fine yellow-brown stuff that's high in fat. Think of it like this: it's the leftover gunk from all the work your cells do over the years, stuff the cell can't fully break down or get rid of. So as we get older, it just kind of builds up in our long-lasting cells, like in our heart muscle, our brain neurons, and our liver. It's literally a physical marker of a cell getting older. And lipofuscin isn't alone. It has a close cousin called ceroid pigment. It also comes from the breakdown of fats. So, together, these two basically create a visible record of a cell's entire life story, telling a tale of decades of just wear and tear.
All right, let's move on to our last category. Now, these pigments are way less common, but when they do show up, they give us incredibly specific and important clues, often pointing straight to a genetic condition.
So, let's talk about porphyrins. These molecules are essential for making hemoglobin, but sometimes the genetic recipe for them goes wrong, and you get a buildup of abnormal porphyrins. This can cause a whole group of disorders called congenital porphyria, and it's not just a human thing. In cattle, for example, certain types of these abnormal porphyrins can get deposited in the skin and cause a really severe reaction to sunlight. It just goes to show how these internal pigments can interact with the outside world.
And finally, let's look at a pigment we all know, but in a place you'd never expect: melanin. Right, we all know it colors our skin and our hair, but in a condition called melanosis, melanin can pop up in really strange places, like deep inside the lungs or the aorta. It's usually harmless, but finding it there is a huge clue for pathologists who are trying to piece together a person's complete health picture.
Wow. Okay, so we've basically traveled through an entire spectrum of colors, right? From the golden yellow of a healing bruise all the way to the deep brown of cellular aging. So what's the big takeaway? How do we actually take this information and, read the body's internal rainbow?
It really boils down to a pretty simple three-step process. First, you just observe the color. Is it yellow, brown, cherry red? Second, you use that color and the context to figure out the likely pigment. Is it hemosiderin, lipofuscin, carboxyhemoglobin? And then third, once you identify the pigment, it helps you uncover the root cause. Is this a healing injury, just a sign of aging, or something serious like carbon monoxide poisoning?
And that right there is the most crucial thing to remember from all of this. These colors aren't just random. They are the body's own internal language. It's a precise visual code that gives us direct insight into everything, from a simple little bump to a really complex disease. Learning to read these colors is an incredibly powerful tool.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, if our bodies are communicating this clearly just through color, what other silent, subtle signals might they be sending us every single day? What else might we be missing?